Today, we journey into the life of Ladye Love Smith, a name cherished by millions who follow the Gaither Homecoming series. Known for her angelic voice, gentle spirit, and inspiring faith, Ladye Love's contribution to Southern gospel music is both profound and deeply personal. Ladye Love was born and raised in Alabama, deeply rooted in faith and music from a young age. Growing up in a Christian home, music became her outlet of worship and expression. By her teenage years, her unmistakable voice had already begun to draw attention in local churches and music circles. She attended Trevecca Nazarene University in Nashville, Tennessee, where she honed her vocal talent and deepened her understanding of ministry and music. It was during this time that she met her future husband and lifelong musical partner, Reggie Smith. Marriage and musical partnership. Ladye married Reggie Smith, a fellow vocalist with a rich baritone voice. Together, they became one of the most beloved duos in Christian music. Their harmonies, both on and off the stage, reflect not just musical compatibility, but a deep spiritual bond. The couple has toured extensively across the United States and around the world, spreading the gospel through song. Their voices blend in perfect harmony, and their performances often bring peace, joy, and healing to those listening. The beginning of loss. Ladye Love Smith's journey into ministry is one marked not only by faith in music, but also by pain that shaped her spirit. Her story of loss began early in life, when she was still discovering who she was. In the 6th grade, Ladye experienced her first emotional heartbreak. Her favorite teacher, Mrs. Hudson, a woman who had instilled confidence in her and helped her embrace her unique self, died suddenly while 8 months pregnant. It was the first time Ladye was forced to confront the reality that people we love can be taken without warning. But nothing could prepare her for what came next. At just 14 years old, during a Christmas season that was supposed to be filled with joy, Ladye's older sister, her best friend, her encourager, her rock, was tragically killed in a car accident caused by a drunk driver. The grief was too heavy for a young girl to understand. Overnight, her life changed. The bright warmth of family became shadowed by a deep, aching silence.
In my life, it was pretty amazing in our family. We had never lost a grandparent. Well, on my dad's side, we never lost a grandparent, a sibling, cousin, aunt, uncle, anyone. And I had not experienced loss until, I want to back up a little if you don't mind, in my 6th grade, I had a dear teacher. And I know that may sound but it was a big impact in my life, Mrs. Hudson. And she was just very encouraging. I'll be honest, I was a chubby girl growing up. And that was a big, thing for me, and children, that's a big deal. She just encouraged me in a way that no one ever had, about talent and about just loving me as I was, and just so encouraging. And I remember going to school, and she was like 8 months pregnant, and I went to school that day. And when I got there, everybody was talking really sadly and said that she had died. And I was like, no way. And I remember running to the payphone, trying to call the hospital and find out about her, because this was my first significant person that, encouraged me in that way, aside from my family. And then also kind of started treating us like an adult in a way. We weren't. We were 6th graders, but, gave us that respect. I was running and calling the hospital, and then I ran to find my sister, Julie, who was a senior or junior, senior, something like that. I was like, I'd just gone to that same school, 6th grade. I ran to find her, and I was crying, and my sister Julie comforted me. It was true. She had had a stroke, and they tried to save the baby, and they both passed away. Anyway, it was very big deal, and my sister comforted me, just really comforted me that day. So then fast forward, like 2 years later, my sister, the death of my sister, and I guess the way it was Christmas. It was now around a holiday. And I was the last person to see my sister and my family. My parents had gone to a Christmas party, and we had just moved into a new home, our first night in our home. I had a spend the night party with 4 girls, and we were spending the night. We were laughing and cutting up, and my sister had gone to a Christmas party with her boyfriend, like a company party. And they came back to our home, and we laughed and cut up and played and cheered, did cheers. And they said, we're going to go back out a little bit. And they drove away. And so that night, later that night, policemen came to our home, and my sister was killed in a car accident hit by a drunk driver. So there's a lot of details on that too. But, my people couldn't even find where we lived that night because we had just moved that night. And I just remember getting to the hospital and our pastor was there. But one thing that was just really, I'm 14 and a half. And so I'm almost 15 when this is going on. I'm leaving all my friends at my house by themselves, that a house they've never been in until that night. It was new. And then we go to the hospital. And when the police came to the door, my mom immediately started screaming. Both my brother and my sister were not home yet, but my mother started screaming that my sister had died, was dead. And I just remember that, how crazy that was, because it was like she just innately knew. And just all the chaos and the that followed after that. And then I felt this pressure to call and check on my friends in the middle of all of it. It's just, I think I grew up really fast. I grew up in a really fast way and immediately started trying to be a caretaker to my parents and to make them feel okay because they were devastated. And I could remember when I was little, my mother would say, I could stand anything but the death of a child.
The impact of a loss. The death of her sister was more than a personal heartbreak. It broke the entire family. For Ladye, it meant growing up far too soon. While still a teenager, she began to feel responsible for protecting her parents' emotional well-being. She kept her sorrow to herself, believing that if she cried, it might make their pain worse. So, she held it all in. That kind of unprocessed grief left a scar that took years to understand and address. She often says that she had mentally put her sister away at college, because it was easier than facing the cemetery, easier than fully accepting the loss. This experience of unresolved grief didn't fade with time. Instead, it taught Ladye about the quiet battles people carry. She eventually went on to study psychology and counseling, not just for a degree, but to learn how to process pain she had never fully faced. The loss of not having children. Later in life, after marrying Reggie Smith, Ladye dreamed of starting a family. They believed that God, in His time, would bless them with children. After trying naturally without success, they pursued medical assistance. During a Gaither tour, Reggie even gave Ladye a fertility injection backstage, proof of how deeply they desired to become parents, even in the midst of ministry. One day, the doctors discovered something unexpected, a pregnancy. A miracle, they said. But that miracle was short-lived. Their precious baby girl was lost, leaving behind the hope that had just begun to bloom. The grief of infertility isn't always visible, but it is very real. The silence of an empty nursery, the dreams that never came to pass. It's a sorrow Ladye and Reggie have carried together. It was another kind of death, the death of a dream.
Reggie and I, we got married and we just expected to have children a little later, and we married a little late in life, and then a couple years later we started to try to have children, and it wasn't happening. And we were on the Gaither tour. We were on the big Gaither tour with all the artists traveling around. And I can remember, we were trying to make it work. So then we went to in vitro and went to one doctor and then went to another doctor, and we did countless tests with lots of financial a lot of money doing a lot of tests. And I can remember being on the tour, and then when we finally were going to do the retrieval, it just hit on a certain way where Reggie literally was giving me a shot backstage at intermission for the egg to drop, and we went out and sang on second, and we flew home immediately to get there in time for the doctor to do the retrieval. And no one knew it. No one knew that was going on, because at that time I thought, my work, we've got to be very professional. We've got to keep doing it, But I do remember an artist, and I'm going to be honest about this, kind of saying to us, asking us when we were going to have children over, making a big deal about it before that, and said that we were being selfish, waiting, not going ahead and having children. And that was very hurtful, because we were doing in vitro at that time and had tried countless things. And, people don't realize, they don't mean it to be mean, but it's just kind of crazy. Mm-hmm. So we went back. It was Thanksgiving. We were excited. My mom and dad came to Thanksgiving, and I had not told my mother about all these struggles because I wanted it to be a surprise. But I finally told her. Our parents came for Thanksgiving, and we were so excited. We had 4 eggs. We had a great chance. and they came and we made a dinner at our house, and then we got the call that none took. So I just tried to say, it's okay. God's got a way. It's going to work out. In my mind, I thought God's going to give us that miracle. We're going to keep trying. He's going to work. Then we did another in vitro, and it didn't work. And it was very stressful that year. All these injections of progesterone and all these things were horrible, that part. And I know a lot of women out there have dealt with that and been through that. And that's just a process that is a really hard process between your husband and you, and all of the emotions that you're each feeling individually, and how you address that and how you grieve that or process that can be totally different. And it can be the same. Either way, it's hard. But we went on and tried more. And then I finally said, you know what? Maybe we're not to have children, Reggie. Maybe we're to be these encouragers that people have been for me. And we're to be encouragers to our friends' children, and just be there. And so we finally just kind of tried to let that go.
God loves you just the same. In the middle of all these losses, her sister, her child, her unfulfilled dreams, Ladye came to a powerful, life-changing realization. God's love doesn't change, even when life breaks your heart. In a podcast with Auntie and Beeler, Ladye shared something profound. Even in our overcoming, things don't always get tied up in a nice little bow. That statement speaks to so many of us. There isn't always a happy ending. Sometimes we carry loss for the rest of our lives. But what Ladye found was that God was with her anyway. He wasn't waiting for her to get over the pain or to put on a smile. He was present in the pain. And even when she couldn't become a mother, even when her heart cried out with questions, God never pulled away. He stayed close. He whispered truth. And he reminded her, you are still loved, still chosen, still called. The gift of Brett, the adoption story of Reggie and Ladye Love Smith. For Reggie and Ladye Love Smith, the journey to parenthood was paved with prayer, pain, and finally, an unexpected gift named Brett. After walking through the heartbreak of infertility, failed IVF attempts, and even a later miscarriage of a baby girl, the Smiths found themselves waiting, hoping for a different kind of miracle. And it came through adoption. Adoption wasn't their second-best option. It became their miracle in motion. Brett wasn't just placed into their home. He was placed into their hearts, their purpose, and their ministry. From the moment he entered their lives, Brett brought healing, joy, and laughter into a house that had long prayed for a child. Reggie and Ladye don't speak often in public about Brett's private life, respecting his journey and privacy. But what they do share is full of love. That Brett is their beloved son. Not by biology, but by divine design. They've raised him with faith, surrounded by music, and in the center of a ministry home where worship is more than a sound. It's a lifestyle. Reggie once said in an interview that being a father was one of the greatest blessings of his life. For Ladye, after years of wondering if she would ever be called mom, Brett was the answer to 1,000 whispered prayers. Parenthood doesn't always come in the way we expect. For some, it arrives in silence, in waiting, and then suddenly, like a sunrise through adoption. Brett's story is part of a bigger picture, a picture of God's timing, healing, and purpose. And through this son, Reggie and Ladye learned something profound. Love doesn't need a bloodline. It needs only a willing heart. Friend, maybe you've been through loss. Maybe your dreams haven't come true, and you're asking why. If you've lost a loved one, or a child, or the chance to even have one, know this. You are not alone. You are not forgotten, and you are not unloved. Ladye Love Smith's story is one of sorrow, yes, but also of unshakable faith, beautiful worship, and God's grace in the valley. Let her life be a reminder to all of us. You can worship even when you're wounded. So friend, if you've walked through loss, if you've prayed for children who never came, if you've buried dreams and smiled through silent pain, let this be your hope. Like Ladye Love, you can still sing. You can still serve. You can still be held by the God who doesn't need your life to be perfect to love you perfectly.